Good morning, Noblesville, Indiana. It's Mayor Chris Jensen here. Great to be with you on another edition of Mental Health Monday. It's a beautiful, beautiful September day. Kristen, we're almost to fall here. This is hard to believe, but I'm joined once again by just a great friend of mine, a awesome person, a wonderful mother, an awesome spouse, a great therapist, a wonderful small business owner. I thought I'd give you all the accolades
I'm
this
like,
morning.
well, we're setting me up to
Oh,
just fall
I'm
from
giving
the
it to you this morning.
fall
Kristen
from the
Boyd, good
pedestal
morning.
here. I am not all those things. So
You
just
are those things, but good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mayor Jensen. Thanks for having me this morning.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. I'm hyped up on this Monday morning. I'm excited. We have several great topics I want to talk about. One of them being negativity. So maybe I'm trying to counter that by starting so positively here this morning, possibly. But yes, but welcome to another edition of Mental Health Mondays with Kristen Boyce. We're going to talk about some emotions, some feelings here today. Get us started on the right foot. I know kudos to all those people who are watching who are parents that we're cruising through halfway through September here, and we've got Noblesville kids in school. I know our friends at HSE, which is actually a lot of them live in Noblesville, are getting a transition back to make normal schedule. So kudos and awesome job to our teachers, our administrators, our parents. We're getting through it right now, which is a not an easy feat and something that I'm not sure all of us thought we probably could do. But a few ground rules here this morning. If you're watching, which we know we have a lot of people watching every single week, say hi if you want to. Feel free to type in the chat there your thoughts, your feelings, a quick hello. We love to hear from all of our friends who are tuning in this morning, so feel free to do that. If you have any questions, by all means, lay them out there. If we don't get to them during our conversation this morning, we'll make sure either Kristen or myself or one of the members of our team who are experts in that area will follow up with you because we want to make sure any questions are answered here this morning. So with that, Kristen, let's get started in only the way that you know how to get us started here this morning with some great square breathing. So take it away.
We are going to start with our breathing. This is the number one strategy I teach clients, and I do it in my own life. There's a lot of breathing going on in the Boyce household. So the first thing we do is you're going to put your feet on the floor, get comfortable in a chair or a couch, wherever you are. It doesn't matter. Pushing your feet into the floor. We're going to inhale for 4 through our nose, hold for 4, and then exhale slowly out our mouth for 8, like you're cooling a cookie if I teach kids, or cooling soup. And this is something that helps regulate our nervous system so we can tolerate the emotions that come up on the daily, the overwhelm, maybe some anxiety you might be feeling. This is a way to self-regulate, self-soothe, which I really teach parents, grandparents, it doesn't matter, teachers, how to self-soothe, how to self-regulate so we can help those around us also do the same. So let's do it together. We'll do one deep breath, pressing into your feet. Inhale through your nose. Slowly exhale out your mouth. Let's do one more together. Inhale. Fill up that balloon. Another way is to do VOO on the exhale, VOO. And we won't do it today, but you can do this in your own life. This really helps the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calming part of the nervous system, activate itself to calm down. So VOO, we did it in the car with my kids. They're like, oh, and I have teenagers. So they're like, Mom, I'm like, no, we're going to do it. Come on, throw me a bone. Sorry, your mom's a therapist. So we did the inhale, exhale.
I'll do it. It's cool.
See? So you're going to try that on. Try that on at home. When you feel really activated, that will immediately drop into your parasympathetic nervous system. Something you can also teach your children, VOO on the exhale, and do that 5 to 6 breaths, and then check in and notice, what are you feeling in your body? Do you feel some release? That's the whole goal, to release that tension or tightness. And we oftentimes feel it in our chest. We feel it in our shoulders. It carries all the way down through our back and that brain stem. So the reason why we're doing this is my little brain model. Here is this is basically the neocortex is on the outside, and this is the parasympathetic nervous system on the inside. So this is our brain stem that connects up through the brain. It's hard to do this backwards. But it goes right back here. That's why doing the breathing helps that parasympathetic nervous system activate and calm down. There's a whole reason I'm doing this. It's all connected to the body, and the brain are here to heal itself. Through the breath, we're able to do that.
I love that we're adding some sound to it. I totally anticipate going out into the community and walking through downtown and hearing collective voos as I walk through. So maybe we should do a collective voo one of these days and time it maybe with the tornado signal on Friday or something. So
there we go. I love it.
I love that. Great exercise. And I know I've talked openly. We've worked with our kids on square breathing. The voo, I think, might even be more easier. It might be easier for my 3-year-old to comprehend. So looking forward to trying that. It does make a huge difference. Thank you for getting us started out that way. So our first topic I want to tackle this morning, one that is just so present in our society right now, and it's negativity. I like social media. I'm on social media a lot. Anyone follows us knows that I use it a lot. I will say though that is the breeding ground of negativity. This weekend, actually, my communications director will cringe, but there was somebody who commented something on something that was blatantly false and negative, and I typed and retyped and edited and deleted several times and didn't post because I wanted to call out the negativity and let it go. But it's all around us, and it's because there's a lot of emotions right now on how who's doing what and judgment and families doing different things. There's also an election in 50 days from today that I've yet to see any positivity surround, which is it's just interesting. So there's a lot of negativity. So Kristen, let's talk a little bit first about how we deal with negativity in others, and then maybe some self-policing, if you will, on how we can maybe deal with negativity in ourselves.
I'm going to start with connecting us all that we all can be negative.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think that someone else is being negative, I'm like, well, look what it's like, that 3 fingers pointing back. You can't see 3 fingers pointed back at myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have to do a self-check and going, okay, what am I bringing to the table? Am I bringing negativity? And what do we call negativity? Like, what are we labeling as negative? One person might not label that as negative. Another person might label that as negative. I have to self-assess and go, okay, what's going on in me? And you know where I'm going. I want to identify emotion. So oftentimes what I see with negativity, quote unquote, is fear. So there's a fear, and sometimes we have defenses. Because we're afraid, we kind of put up these defenses, and defenses can look like judgments. They can look like definitive responses. They can look like right, wrong, good, bad, all, nothing. And so if they fall into those categories, oftentimes what happens is then we shut down and I'm closed off. So now I'm closed to any other perspective, any other point of view, any other listening to what might really be going on, because one, it bumps up against maybe my fear. It's bumping up against maybe a belief. So we have to check our biases. We have to check our beliefs. We have to check what's going on for us emotionally. So sometimes when someone's not in a good space, what we call good space, they're having a hard day. When you go to the grocery store and someone's maybe not as nice as, and I hate to use that word nice, but maybe they're having an off day. We don't really know what's going on for that person. And so oftentimes we find out maybe something's going on. Maybe they're grieving. Maybe they've lost somebody. Maybe something else is driving how they're showing up behaviorally. Now, let's talk about toxic people in our life that constantly put you down, tell you what they don't like about you. They're just kind of mean. Those folks, we're going to maybe slowly back out of relationship long-term with. We're going to set boundaries. We're going to communicate what's okay, what's not okay. It does not mean when we set boundaries that they're all of a sudden going to go, okay, and change their ways. No, probably not. They're boundaries for you, and chances are they might not respect that boundary. Then you're going to have to rumble through whether or not you want to continue to be in a relationship with them. What I know to be true is everybody has stuff going on. Everybody has pain. Everybody's struggling with some sort of grief and loss because we're not going back to how things were. We're grieving over maybe some loss of relationships. We're grieving over maybe the loss of a job. There's so many losses going on right now that people are afraid. They're grieving, they're sad. And when we can go, oh, okay, I wonder what's going, I love the word and phrase, I wonder. I wonder what's going on for them. And you could say, I wonder what's going on for you. Like with our kids, I don't go, well, you're mad or you're angry or okay, I'm going to shut down. If someone's like, you are starting off with you are, you're always, you never, you, I want to we get defensive. We want to protect ourselves. And if I start off with, I wonder what might be going on. And then I'm going to say, limit social media. Okay, let's get honest. We got to limit the media and social media because what we get into is we can feel activated in our nervous system by what someone's saying. And I'm like, take a deep breath, get out, write it out. So like you were saying, get it out before you respond. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You're going to write it out. So you're going to write it out. Just write it out in a notebook. I carry, as you know, I have many, many notebooks. I have many. I write a ton out. I might write to that person in my notebook, not send it, to get out what I'm feeling and to get clear about it. When we feel judged, then we want to get defensive. We want to protect ourselves. And oftentimes those responses, our first response isn't going to be the best response. Even our second response, like you were saying, isn't going to be the best response. Oftentimes I tell people to sleep on it and then limit exposure. We might need to limit the contact we have with that person. We might need to limit our exposure online because the internet right now is filled with fear. Okay. The internet is filled with fear. And the more you're on it, I want you to notice your nervous system. Is it serving you? Is it helping your nervous system, or is it creating more activation in your nervous system? Then you need to get off of it. And then you need to either do what you're physically able to do. So if it's go for a walk, if it's some sort of movement, it doesn't matter what that looks like. Do what you can do with what you have to regulate, to breathe through it before you react. Because right now, people are just impulsively reacting, and we're displacing anger onto other people that it's not really geared towards. I see a lot of displaced anger. And when we do that, we're taking out what isn't intended for that person. And then we have to do repairs. I'm big into repairs. So if I react and I get dysregulated over something, I need to go back to the person and acknowledge my behavior and say, hey, I am so sorry that I hurt you. I see that hurt you. Tell me about that. Yeah, you did. And I'm going to listen instead of saying, well, that wasn't my intention. I hear people saying this all the time. And while they mean well, it's not actually a full apology. So when you go, yeah, I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to do that. That was because, but. That's disclaiming your apology. I recommend that you go in and you say, I am so sorry. I took out my anger onto you and it really wasn't about you. And I can imagine that really hurt. And they're like, yeah, that did. Leave it. Don't go, well, it wasn't my intention. Like cut that sentence out because it kind of disclaims your apology.
I'm gonna have to work on that. I'm the king of my intention was not blank. So that is a personal goal. Kristen, you can hold me accountable for that going forward is to work on that piece of it. I think that's the point, just acknowledging your action, not trying to justify your action, just acknowledge it and apologize for it and allow that process to work through. That's great advice for all of us. You talked a lot about relationships with negative people, whether it be a chronic negative person or somebody. So let's take this on two different fronts. If there's somebody who isn't maybe a chronic negative person, but it's just coming at you, maybe having that day, how would you suggest we address that with somebody? Because that's always a dicey maneuver, right? How do we address that? And then also, so address it with the one-time negative Nancy, sorry for the Nancys of the world, and the chronic negative person as well. How do we address, they're probably addressed differently, I would guess, but could you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I think the first thing is we have to stay regulated. So the first thing, I want to say is you got to take your breaths because it's hard. It's hard to be around someone that's taking, now if they're taking things out on you, you're going to set a boundary. You can say, I'm wondering if there's something else going on. I can see you're really upset right now and it's not okay to talk to me that way. So I'm going to set a boundary. And that's really hard for people to do, by the way. They're afraid they're going to be upset with them. They're afraid they're going to get mad at them more. They're afraid. And then I'm a big fan of if it's really unhealthy in a toxic relationship, get off the phone. I love you and I'll talk to you later. Walk away. So have an exit strategy. If you know you're going to be around someone that is heightened, maybe they have a lot of reactivity, they don't self-soothe very well, they don't self-regulate very well, you're going to stay self-regulated. And then you might say, hey, this doesn't feel okay to me. I'm going to go ahead and go. So you're going to get up, you're going to get in your car, and you're going to drive away. Now, this seems very controversial. I'm like, no, if someone is taking out, they're very dysregulated and you don't feel safe, you get out of the situation. If you have a chronic person in your life, you're going to set some clear boundaries. When you get dysregulated, I'm going to get off the phone. So you may say this ahead of time. They're not going to like this, by the way. We think, oh, I'm going to say this, and they're going to go, okay, no. They're going to get defensive because that's what we do, and that's not on you. That still goes back to their stuff. So I like to tell people, you have to rumble through what is your stuff, what is your issue, what is yours to own, and what isn't yours. It's like the backpack analogy. It's like unzipping the backpack. A lot of times in therapy, I'll go, now whose rock is this? And they're like, well, that's my mom's, that's my dad's, that's, my friend's. And I'll go, now why is it in your backpack? Because they feel responsible for this person's feelings and well-being. And I'm like, that's up to them. Let's give that back because you're powerless over that. So the boundary looks like what's okay, what's not okay. And then we're going to really work on courage to say it. So when you get dysregulated, I'm going to hang up. I'm going to get off the phone. And sometimes I have to recommend if it gets too toxic that we block somebody. And that might be temporary and it might not be, but we may have to block somebody. We may have to unfriend somebody, not to be mean, or unfollow somebody. So in order for me to stay my healthiest self, I have to decide what am I taking on that isn't mine and what is no longer healthy for me. This is a lot of work to do. So what I'm telling you can take years sometimes to do. And I say do it in baby steps. So do maybe one boundary setting. Say, hey, it's not, especially with parents, it's important that you are learning to set boundaries for yourself so you can parent from having healthy boundaries, because we don't want to go from boundary-less or too rigid boundaries, too controlling. That means we're trying to manage, trying to control someone else, which we can't do, by the way. I can only manage what's okay for me and what's not okay for me. And that's some deep work to do. I also love letter writing. So if someone's really, really I'm really struggling with them, I will write them a letter, not give it to them. And then that helps me get clear on what do I need to do? What are my next steps? And it's scary sometimes to set some boundaries, again, because we're afraid of being cut off maybe, or we're afraid of them getting mad at us. And sometimes what's happening is it's leading us towards health. So if we're around a very toxic person and we speak our truth by saying, with love and grace, we say, it's not okay to talk to me that way, and they don't handle it well, that's going to help me say, okay, maybe this isn't going to be a healthy relationship, and it will lead me towards health. That's the whole goal. It doesn't mean lead me towards comfort, because discomfort, we're growing. It means lead me towards health. And sometimes health isn't always comfortable.
I like that. Health is not always comfortable. That's good. So I want to transition real quick. I want to get to fear in a minute, but I have a little bit of a curveball parenting question for you. So I know there are a lot of parents right now, their kids, my son included, have gone through baseball tryouts, and now we're into basketball tryouts. We were doing that last Thursday and Friday. I know that there are a lot of kids trying out for things. And so that means a lot of kids aren't making teams. For example, my son got bumped down on his baseball team. He was on the black team and now is playing on the gold team. And that was a really tough moment in our house to talk through. And I'm not even sure what emotion to characterize that. Obviously he thought his world was ending for a little bit. We've worked through it and we realized the opportunity that's there. But I thought maybe you could talk about that for a minute, Kristen, in this season of kids are going to be disappointed. whether it be, like I said, it's sports tryouts or disappointed that school's not going to be just the way they want it. Can you talk a little bit about how to maybe address that with our kids? And again, it's a total selfish question because we just went through it, but would love to get some ideas on addressing maybe that disappointment in kids.
This is a huge, it's a great question, a huge, I would say, issue for most children at some point in our life. Think back at your childhood, trying out for things and the courage that took. I talked about that on the Close the Chapter podcast because I just had this happen with my daughter, trying out for something and the fear they have of putting themselves out there. And one of the things that I really want to emphasize is the grief that goes along with not making something. So the first thing you're going to do is process the emotion, and there's going to be a lot, right? I can imagine he had a lot of sadness, anger, I mean, the whole bit, right? Grief. And so we want to process that with them. We want them to be able to process it. What we want to do is we want to bright side it. We want to bypass their emotion with positivity, like, oh, you have friends on that team and oh, it's going to be wonderful. We want to start with processing the feelings first. And so that means that could take a while. PS. So we're going to sit there and go, yeah, oh, that's so hard. Oh, you feel so disappointed. Yeah. I mean, we're going to just acknowledge, and that makes sense that you feel that way. Let's just get it out. Let's process it all. Let's get it out. First and foremost, process the feelings. Secondly, acknowledge what you heard him say. I'm mad and I'm sad, whatever the feelings are, because they're going to be a lot, and go, yeah, that makes sense. You feel sad and mad and you feel disappointed. And you really wanted to make that team. You really, really were hoping that you would make, yes, and whatever the feelings are. It could be anger, it could be sadness, whatever, fear. And we want to acknowledge that with a lot of empathy. What we try to do is extinguish it with positivity. And I'm telling you, you're going to bypass the experience. And then the third thing is let them process through to get to, they will eventually get to acceptance. That may take a while. It might take a while. So we might say, yeah, now after we process the feelings, now how do you feel about being on was it the gold team?
Yeah.
Okay, being on the gold team.
Right.
And then they may have some other feelings as they've shifted through the process. They will eventually get to the other side. Now, the other message that I always send, because this has happened, my kids have not made things, and I have to manage my own inner child going, okay, let's be honest. I'm like, well, why did they make the team? They were good or whatever. And I feel disappointed. I feel sad. My little girl can identify with their inner child. I have to self-soothe through that. I have to acknowledge my disappointment, my sadness, my grief. So I don't put that on my kid. Super important part of the process. And then at the end of all this, I say your worth and value doesn't come from making the team. You're enough just the way you are. You are still enough. So I want to make sure that they know their worth and value doesn't come from making the A team or making the thing, whatever it is. And that they know that they have worth and value just being who they are. This is just icing on the cake. This is just for fun. Because we put a lot on, they feel like their worth and value comes from whether or not they made it or not. This is a huge struggle. It is. It's just, it is.
And as you said too, I think sometimes our kids probably process this better than parents do along the way. But acknowledging that is so key. And I think you said it too. That's hard because we as parents want to go just, we went straight to, oh, but look who's so-and-so's on this team. And, and you'll have more time to start and whatever it was that we said in that moment, but it's really hard.
Super hard. Because I can feel right. You can feel your own feelings around it. Yes. So let's not pretend like we don't have them. I can feel it. And I immediately, it's like, boom, I want to get in there and, make it all better.
Yeah.
Because I feel so sad because they're sad and upset.
Yeah. I heard this weekend at church, the pastor said that a parent can only be as happy as their least happy child. And that kind of clicked with us too, kind of working through our emotions as parents and how it relates to our kids. So sorry to throw that curveball at you. I just think there's a lot of parents going through that right now because I know there were basketball tryouts or baseball tryouts. 'Tis the season for all that. So I just thought this might be helpful to some parents out there to hear that. So let's quickly touch on fear. What we just talked about there, if I have a kid that's fearful of trying out right now as an adult, there's a lot of fear. You're starting to see a lot more resemblance of normalcy coming back. There may be fear about COVID. There may be fear about job future prospects, the economy, retirement. I mean, you name it. There's a lot to be fearful of. So let's get some advice on how to handle and process that fear.
First, we have to acknowledge it. If you're not acknowledging it, you're not dealing with it. So we have to acknowledge the fear that's there, and we all have it. No one gets out of this for free. We all have fear, and it's okay. It's on the continuum. How much are you living in fear? Is it all the time? Some of the time? None of the time? It's really everything's on a continuum. And when you can acknowledge your fear, you can breathe through it. You can tend to it. It's super important. Then the invitation is to process it. So if we sit and loop on it, so my daughter was looping the other day, and I said, when you're in your head, you're dead, after we processed. Okay. And then she goes, when you're in your heart, you're smart. I'm like, look at you with the rhyming. Okay. So when we're in our head, we're dead inside. Like that's the only thing we can fixate on. So what I tell people is we got to take a breath, notice your body's response. We've got to tend to it instead of trying to numb it, instead of trying to move away from it, instead of trying to defend it. Whatever we're trying to do is let's tend to it. Also, when we can move, again, I've gotten in this habit of walking and whatever you're physically able to do, any kind of movement to move it through. Obviously, faith can play a big role. Prayer can be super helpful. Meditation is also helpful. We have to come up with a nurturing list. When I'm afraid, what am I going to do? You got to write it out to get it out. Talking to somebody is super important. So if you've got a high level of fear, a therapist might be someone you need to talk to. It might be rooted in a trauma from the past, and that it's hard to learn how to self-soothe. And what we really teach in therapy is not teach, but what we really experience is, oh, I can handle this. I can handle this. I can do this. Because what we feel is, I can't handle this. I can't do this. And we don't know how to handle our feelings. It's super important when it comes to fear that we're nurturing it. And I know we're out of time, so I wanted just to encourage people to get a journal. I know it sounds so ridiculous and I don't have time, and write it out because it helps you process it rather than the hamster wheel of keep looping on it.
Well, we can start in 2 weeks with the fear topic because I know there's a lot more to it there. There's a lot of depth of fear. So we'll revisit that. But Kristen, thank you again. This was a whole deluge of great topics here that I think are very timely for all of us to discuss here today. So before we leave, though, one thing, I believe this is National Suicide Prevention Month. I know my friend Maggie Owens would make sure that I right now. So I want to acknowledge that. And maybe you can touch on some resources for that topic, and then any other help that folks need right now. Where can they turn to?
Absolutely. Let's start with the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. If anyone is having any kind of suicidal ideation, which I know a lot of people are, please reach out for help. You're worth it. And there are people here to help you. So let's give you that number, 1-800-273-8255. Also, if you don't want to talk on the phone and you just want to text, that's okay too. You can text 741-741. That's 741-741. We also have Prevail here in town. They do, if you're in a domestic violence situation, emotional abuse, they have a 24-hour hotline at 317-776-3472. And the Overdose Lifeline, I wanted to make sure we said that too. If anyone is struggling with drug or alcohol addiction, 211. You text 211 and that someone can help you immediately. Community North, also in St. Vincent Stress Center, if you need immediate help, they do have a psychiatric area to help you immediately if you feel like you need to get in today. So please do not hesitate to get help. And there's tons of therapists in the area. I recommend a trauma therapist for those that are struggling with suicide. Typically, there's something underneath that. There is help available. So please do not hesitate. And if you need free help, there is CTS, Christian Theological Seminary. They have a graduate counseling program. Indiana Wesleyan has a graduate counseling clinic that they offer free counseling. So there are resources in the area. So please be sure to reach out and don't do it alone.
Again, awesome advice. Thank you so much, Kristen Boyce, for yet another great edition of Mental Health Monday. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Again, we'll start with fear. If you have any other topics that you would ever love us to discuss, make sure you send Kristen or myself a note. We're happy to tackle anything. We're going to be here for you in 2 weeks to talk through this. But stay safe, Noblesville. You are worth it. And